Hi everyone, this is a really quick update because I've got too much time and I was even in two minds about recording this tonight, but I haven't recorded a DVD or Blu-ray review update for a few weeks. My last one was the Prometheus review, which hopefully you all checked out. Got to say thank you to everyone who watched that, everyone who commented on that. I know that divided a lot of people, but I ended up getting quite a few subscribers and views off of that. So hopefully you guys who subscribed are into these Blu-ray and DVD reviews that I do as well. As I say, I'm going to make this one really quickly. I'm just going to bring this down a bit because the camera's playing up a little bit there. So just going to really whiz through these last 5 DVDs, Blu-rays that I've seen, and then I'll do a slightly longer one next time. I mean, they're a couple of the films I'll go a bit in depth on, but the others are a bit piecemeal, really. Not much to say about them. So I'm just going to go through it very, very quickly and talk to you about the last 5 DVDs and Blu-rays that I watched in order. Now, first two actually that I'm going to review was actually a double set which I bought. It was 2 discs in one box, so I'm going to review them both in the same breath. The first film is Anchorman. Now, I'm not a fan of Will Ferrell at the best of times, and I've actually avoided Anchorman for a very, very long time, despite all the good things that I've heard about it. A lot of people rave about it, a lot of people say it's a great comedy, Will Ferrell's fantastic. I hear a lot of people quoting from it and whatnot. So I saw this for quite cheap in a double deal, so I thought, you know what, why not, let's buy it and check it out. So to encapsulate the plot very briefly, Will Ferrell plays a anchorman at a news station, much like Fox or CNN. I think in late 70s, possibly early 80s, I think it's late 70s. He plays an anchorman called Ron Burgundy, and the news station is run on high masculinity, high, what's the word? I can't think of the word. High testosterone newsroom, where you've got Will Ferrell playing the anchorman, you've got like this gung-ho Texan who presents the sport, you've got Paul Rudd playing quite a slick, Mr. Slick update man who goes out on the ground to give news updates, and you've got Steve Carell playing a quite a funny role, quite a humorous role, and I'm not a fan of Steve Carell either. Like a dim-witted role as the weatherman for the station. He says a lot of very stupid things in the film. And now I really don't like Will Ferrell, and I really don't like Steve Carell, so I don't know what possessed me to get the film, apart from the fact that it was in a deal. Essentially, so this news station is run by men, for men, and it's all about men and building up egos, building up the egos of the presenters. Will Ferrell's character, Ron Burgundy, is very much like Bill O'Reilly. If you watch Fox News, he's very much like that. You can imagine this is who Bill O'Reilly was 30 years ago, although Ron Burgundy is not quite as right-wing and not such a Republican twat as Bill O'Reilly. But essentially, the story in a nutshell is that they run this news station. He's loved by millions. He's adored. The anchormen are like men of superstardom. They're famous. Everyone knows them. Everyone loves them. And then a woman comes along to the news station who decides that she wants to be the anchor man, the anchor woman, and starts treading on Ron Burgundy's toes, starts stepping onto his turf, and starts displacing him. That's pretty much it for the plot. And then there's a lot of standardised Will Ferrell slapstick comedy, silly things. There's a lot of great cameos from people like Ben Stiller, Danny Trejo, even, oh God, what's his name? Tim Allen? Is it Tim? Not Tim Allen. What's the guy's name? Yeah, Tim Allen. I think it is Tim Allen, the guy from Shawshank Redemption. It's late. My mind's not thinking properly. Cameos from people like him. It's an alright movie. There are some laughs in it, but overall it's just overrated shit, really. It's for the frat boys of America to watch and laugh at. And I know I'll get criticised for that, I'm sure I will. But I just don't see the massive laughs in it. It's just a pretty much standardised, dumbed-down comedy. It's a balls-to-the-wall type comedy. There's a few moments that made me actually laugh out loud that were quite intelligent, but for the most part, it plays up on stereotypes and gimmicks that are supposedly funny. It has its moments, some of it's quotable, but overall, it's easily forgettable, for me anyway, apart from Steve Carell, actually, who's actually the funniest thing about the movie, if you ask me. And as I say, I can't stand him. I think he's a pretty crap actor. He seems to play the same comedian in all of them, where he's a little bit stupid and says things quite deadpan. I think it's evidence in the US remake of The Office how poor he is at actually conveying comedy when you compare it to Ricky Gervais. But he's actually pretty good in this. The film overall is quite good. It's quite enjoyable to watch once, but that's it. It's not laugh out loud funny. It's not something that I'm going to rave about too much. The costumes and the setting are pretty convincing. It's a good parody of the time, I suppose, and it tries to go some way to hinting at the idea of equality between men and women, and that sort of time scale where it took place, where women were coming more to the fore, particularly in the realm of the television world. But it just doesn't do it for me as a comedy, and it's not all that great. I don't know what you guys are all raving about personally, but each to their own, I suppose. For me, it didn't do it really. It's a 4 out of 10 movie for me. Maybe a 3 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10 movie. If you like it, go check out any other Will Ferrell movie or watch any sort of silly slapstick movie. Some of the Farrelly brothers comedies maybe. I won't be watching it again any time soon. So that's what I've really got to say about that. Now, as I say, it was bought in a double pack, so it was bought along with something else. And the second disc DVD on there, another film which I hadn't seen, was Zoolander. Now, Zoolander is another film which I've heard massively great things about. I am quite a fan of Ben Stiller, actually, a significant fan of him. For the most part, I do like his films. I do find his comedy pretty good. Whereas, although he can deal with the gross out and everything, it's a little bit more intelligent, a little bit more witty. And as you know, I watched that film Greenberg a while back, where I said that it was such a change for Ben Stiller from his usual typical comedic roles. This is his usual typical comedic role. I'm sure many of you know the plot on this one, but essentially it's one of Ben Stiller's earlier films out of his comedy rack. But Ben Stiller plays a brainless model who is manipulated by this master fashion designer played by Will Ferrell again, who's sort of like this Versace type character who needs to eliminate the Prime Minister of Malaysia, I think it is, because he's come out and said that slavery shouldn't happen, that the people who are currently producing all the fashion wear that the model's wearing need to be paid some more, and this doesn't go down well in the fashion community. So Will Ferrell decides to brainwash, if you will, Ben Stiller's brainless model and turn him into an assassin who's going to assassinate the Prime Minister of Malaysia. That's pretty much the plot. It's much like Anchorman, very bare minimum plot, and that's how it trudges along. Now, this movie's also got another person which I hate, I can't stand, called Owen Wilson. I don't like Owen Wilson films at all either. The only film that I like of Owen Wilson's is, and I'll get criticised for saying this, Marley and Me. Purely because I don't like Owen Wilson as a comedian. I think he's crap, he's boring, he depresses me almost when I'm watching a comedy, and you're not meant to get depressed when you're watching a comedy. But Molly and Me, you are meant to get depressed at, and it's not too much of a comedy in terms of him playing a comedic persona. But in this, it actually works, and it's good because him and Ben Stiller are rival models, and they do make ends meet within this movie. And it was almost like me making ends meet with Owen Wilson, being like, okay, I'm going to accept you for this movie. Actually, this movie is pretty funny. It's got its moments. It's got some brilliant scenes in it. It's a really great parody of models. And the typical idea of them as brainless, although it has something to say about them having a little bit more to them than first meets the eye. It's got a load of cameos. I can't even begin to list them now, but there's so many comedic appearances. It felt like a Ricky Gervais series of extras whereby all these celebrities constantly pop up throughout the whole programme. And that's what it was like in this film. I think maybe easily 40, 50 celebrities, so much so that in the credit list you just see this whole list of celebrities, and it just says playing himself, herself. But it is funny, and it did make me laugh out loud a number of times. And the blooper reel was pretty funny on it as well. Ben Stiller actually did what he often does with a lot of his comedies. He wrote this, he directed it, he starred in it, he produced it, and it shows. And I think it when he does all of those things, it comes across very well in his films. Again, it's another brainless one. It's another flick it on. You don't really need to think about it one. I'm not really one for these comedies, to be honest with you. I'm not a big comedy movie lover. But for what it was great, and it was enjoyable, and I can see a lot more about what the big fuss is about. I love his looks, like blue steel, I think it's called, or cold steel, and he's got all these different looks which are all exactly the same. And I've seen impressions done of it before. It was very good. For what it was. So, not being a massive comedy lover and being a bit of a Nazi when it comes to comedy as well, if I'm really going to find it funny, I'm just going to rate this movie 6 out of 10. No reflection on Ben Stiller being crap. I actually think it was pretty good, but it's nothing massively memorable. But I am likely to rewatch that, whereas I'm not ever going to watch Anchorman again. I honestly don't think. I understand there's a sequel for Anchorman coming out soon, next year as well, by the way. And I'll probably check it out just to see what it does, how it follows up with it. Anyway, yeah, 6 out of 10 for Zoolander. Recommendation for that, I'd go with another Ben Stiller film where he plays, I unusual character. Maybe Tropic Thunder, perhaps. I think it's closer to Tropic Thunder, whereby he's playing such an exaggerated character, rather than something like Meet the Parents, where he's just playing himself, the everyday guy, in a normal situation, and the comedy comes out of that. This is a extraordinary guy in an extraordinary situation, and the comedy that comes out of that. But I mean, if you're into it, if you like that sort of thing, go check it out. They were okay for what they were. Brainless. That's all I've really got to say about them. I can't spend any more time on them. Anyway, both of those on DVD. It's pretty much a bargain. If you go down like Sainsbury's or something, you'll pick it up for £3-4. So if you like that sort of thing, go ahead and get it. Next film I'm going to talk about is The Fighter, which I got on Blu-ray. Now, I'm a massive fan of Christian Bale. Have been for a long time, way before he became Batman. He is a fantastic actor, and I know he had a meltdown a couple of years ago, and people criticised him for that. But he is the reason that I got that film. I never would have picked up that film if Christian Bale wasn't in it, because I would have seen it from the outset of just another boxing movie. Essentially, what this film is about is, it's a true story, and it's based on Mark Wahlberg's character, who is the younger brother of this famous boxer who took on like Sugar Ray Leonard back in the day. And the older brother is Christian Bale. And Mark Wahlberg is being trained up by his brother Christian Bale, who is aged now, he's past it, and he's addicted to crack. And a lot of people think he's a bad influence on his brother. He's not a great trainer. People in the community feel like his brother's holding him back. But Mark Wahlberg has this close-knit connection to his family. Like his mother, who's not really his mother, is his manager. His sisters all like say, you've got to listen to Dickie. That's who Christian Bale is. Dickie, you've got to listen to Dickie. He's looking out for you. Dickie's like, he's got a heart of gold, but he's just fucks up all the time. Like he's late for the training when he's got to be training. Mark Wahlberg's character, he puts Mark Wahlberg's character in a fight which he never should have been in, which Mark Wahlberg just gets pummeled and destroyed. And then Mark Wahlberg meets this girl who he falls in love with, who starts saying, if you really want to make it, you need to start thinking about yourself. You can't think about your family. You need to go to Las Vegas. We need to get you proper training. You've got to cut Dickie out of your life. You've got to cut your family out of your life, basically. And from there, the plot goes. Now, it's actually a great story. About half an hour in, I was thinking, this is a bit generic. This is a bit, we've seen it all before in some way, shape or form. Yeah, the acting's good, but we've seen it all before. And that being said about the acting, Mark Wahlberg, I've always thought, doesn't really act. He more reacts to what's going on around him. And he does that in this film as well. Him, as an actor, he didn't get an Oscar nomination for his acting. And it's no surprise, because he doesn't really act. He plays quite a mild character in it, just reacting to what goes on around him. Whereas Christian Bale plays this wired crack addict who's like looking out for his brother. He's got his best interests at heart, and he goes to jail. And it's really conflicted. He plays a brilliant character. Like Christian Bale really shows in this film how to carry a film. Because if he wasn't in it, I wouldn't rate this one so highly. But he makes it for me. He absolutely makes it for me. And it just goes to show that he can be Batman. He can be in this trilogy of Batman films. But he can still go and make outstanding films which are character-based. And we all know that Christian Bale is this deep character method actor, as we've seen with things like The Machinist. We've seen it before in various films. And once again, he completely transformed himself physically in this. He was gaunt as hell. His hair was receding. His teeth were out. And he plays it absolutely brilliantly. It's got real heart to it, this film. It's not like Rocky. I've heard people comparing it to Rocky, but it's not Rocky. Apparently the director said he wanted to make Rocky in making this film. Well, he surpassed it, in my opinion. I've seen Rocky, and I'm not a massive fan of it. This is a lot grittier, a lot realer. And the thing that underpins the whole story is that Christian Bale's character, Dickie, is being followed by this news crew. It's almost like the American version of Panorama, whereby they're doing an hour special of him, what's become of him now. And it is bookended with this interview with him and Mark Wahlberg on the couch. It begins and ends with this interview. And the ending interview is brilliant. It's only lasts about 20 seconds, but Christian Bale's brilliance comes through because apparently the whole final scene was ad-libbed. It's a great film. It's great visuals. On Blu-ray, it looks stunning. You have to check this film out just for Christian Bale's performance. I easily could say that this is probably one of his best performances that I've ever seen him do. He's amazingly convincing. It's funny. It's got heart. It's got good story. It really pulls you through. You actually do feel for Mark Wahlberg's character because he is torn between this plight between his family and ambition, doing what he actually wants. And although his family are presented as almost like trailer trash, they're not bad people for him. They love him. They're looking out for him. So it deals with some really interesting aspects there, and there's a great scene between Christian Bale's character Dickie and Mark Wahlberg's girlfriend. Once Christian Bale discovers that his girlfriend doesn't really want him training Mark Wahlberg anymore. Go check it out. For that film, I'm gonna have to give it. I'll give it an 8 out of 10 because I can't be giving too many high ranks too freely. But it would be a 7 out of 10. Christian Bale bumps it up to 8 out of 10. Go see it. Brilliant film. If you like it, you're gonna love The Wrestler. You're gonna love Million Dollar Baby. Apparently, Darren Aronofsky, the director of The Wrestler, was lined up to direct The Fighter, but he dropped out to make Black Swan, I think. And you can see where the comparisons are for sure. But definitely, Million Dollar Baby meets The Wrestler is what you're going to get with The Fighter. Brilliant film. Really enjoyed it. Go check it out. Next film, and I'm going to speed it up because we're getting close to my bedtime, is Crazy Heart. Now, this is another one that I've wanted to see since it got all the Academy Awards nominations, all the hype around it. Came out maybe the same year or the year before The Fighter. No, it was the year before The Fighter. And it stars Jeff Bridges as a country singer. I wanted to say washed up country singer, but he's not entirely washed up because he's still travelling around the country playing different venues. He's an extremely talented country singer, and for me personally, I had an interest in this because I've started learning the guitar in the past couple of months, so I wanted to see something which was about a man, Jeff Bridges, who's awesome, going around the country strumming on his guitar, and I was expecting a bit of a grizzled, gruff performance from him along the line of Clint Eastwood's performances in Dirty Harry and all that, you know, someone who swears and smokes and drinks and doesn't really care about things. But that's not actually what I got. With this film, it's about him meeting a young woman who appreciates his work, and it's about him falling in love with her, and in his age state, thinking about the life which he could have had, the life which is not yet necessarily lost. She's a young woman who's got a kid, so he becomes like this quite a loving partner to her, and becomes extremely adoring of her young boy, and embraces these two into his life. But it's about what happens when this country western mentality of cigarettes and drink and alcohol and sleeping around and being lonely and bumming around coincides with this youth, this lost youth, which is a completely different life that he lived. And it's also summarised in this smaller subplot between him and Colin Farrell's character. Colin Farrell plays a much younger country singer who he used to tour with, and he made a couple records with, but they've now gone their separate ways. I think Colin Farrell's character is called Tommy Sweet. Now they have this issue whereby Jeff Bridges represents original, authentic country music as it's meant to be, and Colin Farrell presents this manufactured, commercialised country music, which goes unspoken throughout the film, but it's clearly the division between the two of them. And I think it's that gap between youth and age which is exploited in this film and explored, and quite brilliantly so. Jeff Bridges is fantastic. The songs are amazing. Jeff Bridges sings them all himself. He plays the guitar himself. I discovered afterwards that he'd actually released a country album a couple of years ago, and it sounds fantastic. Some of the songs are absolutely fantastic. Falling is a particularly good song from the film. It didn't win the Oscar for the best song from the film, but it is the best song, in my opinion, from the film. Go and check it out. Great story, great yarn. It's very much like again, in a way, it's kind of like the Fighter, in as much as it's about someone who's past it now, where they are in their life now. But this is a lot more close to home. It feels a lot more intimate because it's a portrayal of one man in a small spectrum of things. Even though he was a huge star in his time, this is now about him and who he is now and what he's going to do with his life now. I guess it can be compared to The Wrestler, actually, and I would compare it to The Wrestler, only without the blood and the fighting. That's essentially what you get with this film. It's got some great performances from Maggie Gyllenhaal as well in there, and Jeff Bridges is fantastic. And look out for the smaller role by Robert Duvall in there as well, who's also got a very short singing role. I love Jeff Bridges. Oh, and one other thing to say as well is I love Big Lebowski. It's one of my favourite films, and I'm sure many of you know Big Lebowski. Look out in the opening 5 minutes for the homage to Big Lebowski. I won't say too much about it, but it's set in a bowling alley, and there is a shot which looks exactly like a shot from the Big Lebowski as well, with Jeff Bridges. So look out for that if you're a fan. For Crazy Heart, I'm going to give it a 8 out of 10 also. I can't rate it higher than The Fighter, and I certainly wouldn't rate it lower. It's a great film, really enjoyable. Go check it out, go watch it. The very last film that I'm going to show here is a film that I've seen trailers for for about a year and a half. Didn't think too much of it, but thought it looked quite an interesting concept, and it is Exam. Now, this is a British horror, psychological thriller, I guess you'd call it, that came out about a year and a half ago. Doesn't have much of a cast, but it's got some people you might recognise, such as Jimmy Mystery and Colin Salmon. And essentially what this film is about is 8 candidates who are going for the ultimate job interview. We don't know when this is set, but the opening title says soon, so some point in the future. They go into this very cold, metallic room in their suits. They sit down at their desk, and they've all got paper on their desk. It says candidate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They sit down, and Colin Salmon, the invigilator, walks into the head of the room, and a guard comes in with a gun. And Colin Salmon says, right, you've got 80 minutes to provide the answer to one question. You can't spoil your papers in any way. You cannot attempt to communicate with me or the guard in any way. And you can't attempt to leave the room. If you do any of these things, you'll be disqualified. And then he leaves the room and starts a timer up the front of the room. So they've got 80 minutes, and every candidate turns over their piece of paper expecting to see a question, and it's totally blank. And the film then moves along for 80 minutes of these people trying to find out how on earth they pass this test for this job, which we don't even know what the job is that they're going for at first. It is a good story for what it is, in a set piece, in a very, very small environment, much like 44-inch Chess, where it's a character piece of people just based in one environment. This was pretty good. Along the way, you're constantly feeling for these characters. You're wondering what the hell's going on, what the hell they're supposed to do, and one by one the characters get eliminated. And what's good is this is not like a horror slasher film where they're eliminated by being killed. This is about them being eliminated by being taken out of the job interview process. It was, I can't remember who quoted it. Was it Mark Commode? Yeah, I love Mark Commode. He called it The Apprentice Goes to Hell. And that is essentially what you've got here. And you keep asking questions and you keep wondering what's going on. The only thing is, towards the end, it gets a little bit like, I don't want to spoil anything, but not outlandish, but it's a little bit, it doesn't quite make sense, and it's a bit of a cop-out, and it's like, well, I could kind of see it coming as well, a little bit. It's hard to make sense of it because there's many layers to it, but it was interesting enough. I think the ending could have been better, but it was interesting enough, and it does keep you interested throughout. So for that, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It was by no means a masterpiece, and it could have been much better, but it was enjoyable. It was some evening pap to get you through the day. It was the psychological horror thriller of what Zoolander was for comedy, basically. If you want to see something like that, it is like Saw, mixed with, what can we say? It's Saw in as much as it's people in a room not knowing what's going on with a timer and trying to work out what to do, mixed with The Apprentice, I guess. But go watch Saw. It's much better. But if you've seen Saw, go and watch Exam. So yeah, 6 out of 10 for that. Guys, that's all I've got for you guys today. I will do another video very, very soon. But I hope you like the review. I hope you like these films. Hope I've inspired some of you to go and check out some of these titles. Guys, thank you to everyone who has subscribed to me over the last week, 2 weeks. I've really appreciated your support. And look forward to working more with you in the future. So keep your eyes peeled for the next video. Cheers, guys. Thank you.